Mr. Pusskins, A Love Story by Sam Lloyd. This is the story of a little girl called Emily and her dear cat, Mr. Pusskins. Emily adored Mr. Pusskins. Each morning, she would invent fun games for Mr. Pusskins to play. In the afternoons, she'd brush his long fur coat and tell him, "Oh, Mr. Pusskins, what a handsome boy you are. I do love you ever so much." See how happy he is? And each night, Emily would snuggle up in a bed and read Mr. Pusskins a special story. But Mr. Pusskins never listened. The girl's constant babbling, blah, 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 bored his whiskers off. He wanted more than this dull life. There he is, not listening to her. So one night, he left. He went places he wasn't meant to go, and he did things he wasn't meant to do, and made friends with the pesky cat gang. So there he's met pesky cat gang. Life without Emily was such naughty fun. Meow, meow, all these kitties are visiting and mixing in the streets. But time passed and things changed. The rain fell and an icy wind blew. The things Mr. Pusskin wasn't supposed to do weren't any fun anymore, and his new friends weren't really very nice. How lovely it would be to have someone brush his fur and tell him how much they loved him. He felt all alone. Then, down the gray streets fluttered a tatty old poster. It was a picture of Mr. Pusskins. He stared at the photo. What a bad-tempered cat he looked. Emily had given him everything a cat could ever dream of, but he had never been nice to her. So the poster says, "Lost, Mr. Pusskins," and then it has the phone number down at the bottom. There he is, staring at his poster. How sorry he felt. He's starting to look a little rough from being out on the streets. Mr. Pusskins found a phone. He dialed the number from the poster and waited anxiously. Someone answered. "Meow," whimpered Mr. Pusskins in a very sad little voice. "Mr. Pusskins, is that you? Oh, thank goodness," said Emily. Wait there, I'll come and get you." Mr. Pusskins sat patiently. Would Emily find him? Did she still love him? He waited, and Emily didn't come. Then, from over the mountains, he heard a car. Mr. Pusskin's heart leapt. So here comes something. It was Emily. His dear Emily was coming for him. The car got nearer and nearer, and then sped straight past. "Meow," wailed Mr. Pusskins. "Emily doesn't love me anymore." But then, there's the car. It's on his way. The car screeched to a halt, and Emily jumped out. "Mr. Pusskins, my beautiful Mr. Pusskins," she cried. "I didn't recognize you." Emily scooped up her dear cat. At last, they were together again. This is the end of the story of a little girl called Emily and her dear cat, Mr. Pusskins. Mr. Pusskins adores Emily. Every evening he cuddles her and purrs gently while she reads to him. Now both Emily and Mr. Pusskins realize how lucky they are to have each other. So there they are, together again. So we are going to make our own Mr. Pusskins cat. So you can start with tracing your hand. So you need to do that on a piece of paper. If you want to make a black cat, if you want to do your brown cat, I have some craft foam here. So all you need to do is spread your hand out and trace around. And once you've done that, you can cut it out. So I have some of the crinkle scissors. Since Mr. Pusskin's fur was starting to look a little rough when he was out on the streets, you can use your crinkle scissors and you can make it look like he hasn't been brushed. So just cut out your hand. So there's your hand. And if you look at the hand upside down, you can use your imagination here, and you can see that it's going to be the 4 legs of the cat, and then this is where we're going to attach his head onto the neck. So that's the beginning. Then we're going to move on to the head. So I really just need a piece of craft foam or paper that's in an oval shape. And again, you can use your crinkle scissors and just cut out an oval shape for your cat head. There's that. And we're going to attach that onto the neck part of our kitty. So I'm going to put some glue on there. I'm going to attach that. So you can attach it as far out or in as you want, whatever you think looks correct for your shape of your hand that you traced. And then to move on to the next part, we have his paws. So I've got some black craft foam, and I just need to cut some little circles to put on the bottom of his feet. Just look like a little part of his paws there. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut those. So those are about the size of a loonie. So if you needed something to trace, you can trace a loonie or something small like that. So we're going to put those on his feet. Here's my last one. All right, so we're going to add those onto the bottom, and he's going to start looking a little more like a kitty. So those are his little paws. So then my next part is going to be to start adding his ears and making his face. So I'm going to just use a piece of my craft foam that I have here. And I just need 2 triangles for his ears that are poking up off the top of his head. And I'm going to add a little bit of glue to that. So since he was out in the wild on the streets, his ears and his fur is probably looking a little rough. All right, so then you can go ahead and add other parts for his tail. So on my brown kitty, I used a piece of pipe cleaner and I just attached that with some glue so that he has a fluffy tail. And if you don't have that, you can certainly go back and use a piece of your scrap. And you can just use your crinkle scissors and you can cut out a long piece so that it looks like his tail. And you can add that. So far, that's what we have for our kitty. And then the last part is going to be to add some eyes. So on my kitty, I did you have a couple options. You can just use a marker and you can draw the face. So I did the circle for the eyes, and then I did a triangle for the nose. And I just used my marker to drop down and draw his mouth and some whiskers. And on my other kitty, I cut out some eyes with some white paper, and then I used a silver marker on the black to make the shape of his mouth and his whiskers. And then you can also use your just a piece of pink scrap paper if you have it, and you can add some pink in his ears. When kitties are healthy, they have pink ears. So Mr. Pusskins made it back home. and he's going to be healthy again. So those are the two options for making your own Mr. Pusskins.